What is your favorite form of media? If you're like many of us, it's actually turning in to audio, just like you're listening to this. But there's something hot and fresh coming out, and no, it's not a Krispy Kreme donut. It's something called a flash briefing. And one of the leading experts in flash briefing is on today's show. You guys can find him at Daniel Hill Media on the IG. That's the Instagram. But I talked to Daniel. We actually just finished up a conversation. It was a ton of fun. And there's four main things that I think are incredible. More than four things, but I'm only going to say four. Number one, how to use lessons from learning from other platforms to gain kind of lessons learned on a new platform that you're on. So like if you used to be on Facebook and that worked okay, how you can take what you learned from there and use it on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever you're doing. A lot of these platforms do work the same. So kind of using lessons learned there. Stand-up comedy and the skills that you can learn in 3 minutes on stage. Stand-up comedy, I've tried this in some of my just normal performances. It's terrifying. But Daniel and I talk about that. The difference between lean back video and just quick stories. Really interesting analogy there, and you're going to like that. And social media, is it too much in our worlds? Maybe. I think a lot of us believe that. So what do you do? This amazing thing that Daniel says, have offline hobbies. I think that's super smart. So without further ado, at Daniel Hill Media, in 3, 2, I lied. Let's just go now. 1, bam! You're listening to Zack Miller Says. All right, Daniel, social media is something that a ton of people are super passionate about. Obviously, you've been a big fan of Instagram, the platform Instagram, for a while now. Do you think social media is like the nemesis to human beings, though? Because I think so many people, there's this negative perception of it, and there's like this beautification to it where people only have to show like their perfect side and stuff like that. And so if someone was to say, like, is social media the devil, if you will, like, what is your response to something like that?
You know, it's funny because it's kind of a two-edged sword, right? Like I read a stat recently that 80% of companies before they make a hire look at the person's social media profile, which makes sense, right? Like I would expect nothing less. So you do need to put a professional foot forward. If you don't have any social media profiles professionally showing what you're doing, it's almost like, are you even working? What are you even accomplishing, right? But by the same token, you're right. If you're constantly looking at people who have better bodies than you, better jobs than you, better lives than you, they're better, that can kind of be inspiring to a point, and it starts to weigh you down. I don't know if you saw, but just yesterday, there was a girl in Malaysia, and she put up a poll on her story on Instagram, and it said, I think it said something like, going through a tough time, should I kill myself or not? And pick life or death. And people voted, and more people picked death, and she killed herself. Like it was just a horribly sad story, and it kind of gave me like a moment like, wow, maybe I should be rethinking this whole thing of what. But then again, are you letting random strangers dictate your life on the internet? Like I would hope to think that we're beyond that, but maybe we're not as a society, right?
Okay, I had not seen that, so that's wild. I was hoping there was going to be a good I was hoping that people weren't going to pick that, but like, why are we so infatuated as a society then with likes and loves and like that, like immediate engagement then? Because that's clearly what it's not clear. Clearly is the wrong word to use, but like it appears that that's what people are going after. It's like if I can't get enough likes, if there's something's bad.
Well, I think that's always been the case, right? Like I think people read, People magazine or Us Weekly or whatever, and it was only famous people that could get that level of adoration. But now you and I can get little micro hits of that adoration from people in our circles who we inspire, which is really cool, and people who also want to tear us down for whatever reason, which happens. But we can all kind of be sort of micro stars in our own little world. And my friends come up to me all the time and say, Dan, I see what you're doing. I think you're doing really cool stuff. I saw you went on this trip. I saw you did that project. I think that stuff is cool. And the fact that I can show my world in a way that I never could before, right? Like if I wanted a job, I'd have to sit down and type a resume and try to convey what it is I do all day, every day, or why you should hire me, or why we should be business partners or whatever. But now you can follow me around and see what I do all day and be like, I really like the way that guy presents himself or the way he does certain things. And that can be the basis of building a relationship.
You're able to not only build that relationship, but you're also able to educate yourself in a way that before you maybe had to go to college for, or to spend a lot of money on an expensive book, and now you can get this micro content in really easy ways that you can learn from, and from people that you may have never had a relationship with. And so there's a couple of things. I just finished Ronda Rousey's book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's before she got into WWE, and it's before she lost in UFC. And it's a really good book. It's voiced. I listen. Obviously, I have to listen to it on voice. I'm talking to you, right? So I listened to the audio version of it, and there's some interesting stories in it where it's like people want to troll and go after her about certain stuff, and she's like, "This is my life. Like, I know what I've done to get there." Right, and I think that's insanely powerful. My favorite advertisement of all time is an Under Armour ad where Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, is training. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's about 2 minutes long. It's like him doing crazy stuff, like what's it called, like cupping or whatever, when they take the fire on you, and then just lifting like crazy, working out like crazy, and then text comes on the screen while the he's swimming in the dark, and it says, "It's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light." And I think that's so powerful, because it's what you do that no one else sees that really makes you that powerful thing in life. And so knowing that people love to be able to be heard from other people, to troll other people, to be able to engage with other people online, what is your advice for someone that, it is still their life, right? And that's their very special serenity. That's their sanity. Like, how does someone grasp that, like, hey, like, it's not just what these people think, like, I'm able to live this life as well?
I think you have to have some kind of offline hobbies, right? You need to do something. There was a book I read last year called Play, and I can't remember the author at the moment, but he was saying, kids played when we were little. We just went outside and we just ran around the block or rode bikes or whatever. But at some point you start to like go through, okay, well, I got to do this and I got to do that, and responsibilities. But when do you just unplug and just play? When do you just go out and have a catch with a friend? So I don't know what you do to unplug or relax, but I got a longboard. It cost me $40 on Amazon. I just go and ride a skateboard around the block a few times, and to me, that's enough time to kind of unplug and look at something in the distance, because I'm always looking 18 inches, away from me at a screen. But to take something, whether it's hiking or some other outdoorsy, unplugged activity, some people knit, some people, whatever it is, to kind of get you centered back, if that makes any sense.
I love that. So I am training for an Ironman race. It happens to be in a couple of weeks. And so I I swim a ton. I ride my bike a lot. I hate running, but I have to run for this race. And so a lot of that time, I'm also consuming audio, either books and podcasts and things like that. But like it's really powerful space, right? It is my offline space. Even if I'm doing something from a technical perspective where I can hear something, but it's like you're saying, it's that play, and I think that's insanely powerful. And people need to get away from the screens oftentimes, because I think there's so many powerful things in the world that they can do. Otherwise, getting away from that. So, how old are you?
I am 39.
39. Audio. When you grew up, radio was the biggest medium, or was TV there yet?
No.
Cable was
TV,
there?
I mean, cable TV was a game changer. Like the first time my parents got Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel, I was probably 7 or 8, and that was a game changer, But growing up in high school, music was everything. And I grew up in the 90s. But what we would do is, we'd buy CDs, and this kind of goes to a little bit of what I learned from my parents. My parents bought vinyl, right? And then what did they do? They made cassette tapes out of it. Like sometimes I think my parents were the original.
So they could hear it on the fly?
In the
that's
car.
What was in the car? Yeah.
Yeah. You can't take, vinyl with you everywhere. And I remember asking my parents, like, where did you learn to do this? Why do you put it on cassette? And they said, oh, well, in the beginning we only had vinyl and it wasn't portable. And like, oh yeah, that's right. That does make sense, And now where are we? So many years later, like music has changed so much, but I spent all of high school, taping songs off CDs and making mixtapes and taping songs off the radio. And, people say piracy is bad, but I'm pretty sure that my parents taught me how to be a pirate from, copying music from vinyl. And then I just did the same thing, taking it off the radio. But that's where audio really hooked me, is realizing what you can do by putting things together in some form of audio. And when I was in college, my parents got me my own computer, got a USB microphone, and my friend and I would record ourselves. It wasn't really a podcast because you couldn't put it online back then, but we would record CDs of ourselves having conversations, making music and send them to friends like it was a radio show, and we'd interview each other and pretend it was. And it's so funny, like fast forward another 20 years and that's called a podcast. But back then nobody was doing stuff like that. Like who makes mix CDs and mails them to their friends of them talking interspersed with music? No one does that. But at that time, that was like an amazing new medium of way of communicating that I love.
Well, Daniel Hill does it because Daniel Hill's an audio god, I guess. So some really interesting things in there. Okay, so '90s music. So I'm 35, so we grew up in the same time frame. Yeah. I remember from a TV perspective though, and I grew up in a fairly poor family. So like we would have like those TVs where like you had like the antennas, but then you had to do the channel switching like that and stuff, like some crazy stuff, yeah. Where you had to like turn the dial for the channel. But '90s music. So, what who's your favorite '90s band or group, or like what were you listening to?
So it's funny because I think when you think about it now, it's like, oh well, that's embarrassing. So you kind of have to move past the embarrassment. But
so are you going to say like Backstreet Boys or NSYNC? Is that where we're going?
I'm a huge Matchbox 20 fan. I really liked them for a really long time. My wife and I spent a lot of time with our ALEXA devices and going back and forth with our favorite 90s music. The Fugees were amazing, Lauryn Hill, all those kinds of 90s artists. It was such a fresh sound. And music today, it feels like they're just yelling in the microphone, or it's not the same. I don't understand what trap music is. I don't understand what's so great about Lil Wayne. And if those are your favorite people, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I feel like music was a little different back then.
That's interesting. Your parents probably thought the same thing about the music that you were listening to, right?
100%.
So there's always that, but it does seem that music isn't as pure as it once was. I guess it's a lot of mixtapes of mixtapes is kind of what it is, but with they're kind of like, I don't know. I'm not a super big music guy, but it's it's taking someone's tune and then tweaking a little bit. But someone would say, well, that's what that's what people did in the '90s. There's the whole. Have you ever seen the whole 4-chord thing, where it's like every song is built off of 4 chords?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that because my parents, listened to a certain kind of music when they were growing up, and I remember coming home in high school and being like, "Mom, Dad, you guys did not tell me about the Doors at all. Like this guy's amazing. Like, why did you tell me about this?" And my wife and I joke, one day, what if our kid comes to us and like, Mom, Dad, you guys never told me about Eminem. Like, this is amazing. What were you, And I think every generation has that. Well, no, we don't listen to that. Like, no, that's for somebody else. But then later you realize this is phenomenal music where somebody else kind of realizes it looking back historically.
Do you think that's because the people who listened to it were very much kind of still in that left side of the bell curve, so they're still very much the champions, and so they didn't grasp the beauty behind it at that point, right? Sure. So at some point you just realize, oh wow, this 20 years later, this actually is really good music. It just wasn't for me then, and I recognize it now.
Yes, yeah. That's 100% how I felt about bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and other bands where at the time everyone's listening to that. Like that's not for me. And then you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh, what? This is really good. And you just kind of sometimes need to step back a little bit from it being top 40, and put it in perspective.
I'm still not there on those two bands, but that's okay. I think Nirvana's one of the most overrated bands of all time.
Overrated, 100%. I get it.
But, they're the first grunge band that really made it big in the 90s at least, late 80s, 90s. And so, and I think, well, not to get on the Nirvana tangent, but 90s music for me was probably Green Day. But then they're an overhyped band too, and so whatever.
Did you listen to Rancid back then?
Rancid, I believe so. That sounds familiar. I went to Warped Tour a couple of times too, and I grew up in DC, so DC had this thing called the HF Festival. So I've seen probably 1,000 bands in my life because they would do this 2-day, 1 and 2 day conference event, whatever they call this thing, big shows, and you would see these amazing acts for $50, and I was in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And my dad and I used to go every year, and so I'm trying to think Prodigy. Remember when Prodigy was huge?
Sure.
So saw them Jimmy's Chicken Shack, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, No Doubt. No Doubt was actually probably the one that I really liked, so I should probably say that.
No Doubt is one of my favorites. I would say top 5 favorites. Yeah.
See, we found it only took a couple minutes, but we found that commonality. Way to go.
Can we talk about No Doubt for a second? Did you ever hear Dream Car? Do you know Dream Car?
Maybe.
Okay,
Is
so
that
the lead singer.
their
No,
lead
no,
singer
this
was
no.
Gwen Stefani's brother originally?
Right, right, right. So Gwen Stefani's kind of off doing her own thing, and the rest of the guys from the band are like, we should do something. So they reach out to the singer of AFI, Davey, and they're like, hey, why don't we make a band? And so this is pretty recent, I would say within the past maybe 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
And this album is really interesting. It sounds like a 80s kind of mix, but modern and really, really good. So
What's it called?
if Dream Car is the name of the band
Okay.
and the name of the album. And the guy from AFI, Davey, his voice, I'm a big AFI fan. So we saw them actually live at Irving Plaza. I guess this was a year or two ago. Really, really good. Highly recommend that. If you're a No Doubt fan, I think you'd like that.
I will definitely check it out. Okay, so you're big into audio. It started early on in your life, and then within the last few years, you've really gotten into Instagram. Is there something that really kind of pulled you into that platform rather than another?
I mean, I'm in IT, so to me, I wanted to put my money or my time behind something that I think people were going to say that is really relevant. And when it first started, I was like, you know what? I think Instagram's going to be big. I think I'm going to put my money on it. And then around 2014, 2015, Snapchat blew up. And I said, nope, I'm pivoting. Snapchat is where it's at. And then in 2016, Instagram came out with Instagram stories. And I said, that's it for Snapchat. Like, I'm never going to give this any more thought. And I 100% have just been focusing on Instagram ever since because I saw that being just a huge key differentiator in this world where people share and spend their time.
What is it about stories that just pulled you in? I mean,
So before, if you wanted to make some videos, it would require a lot of work. Like you would have to video yourself, maybe edit it somehow, put it on YouTube, tell people, hey guys, if you're going to watch me, I'm over here on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but to me, YouTube is somewhat a lean back experience. Like I watch it from the comfort of my couch if it's going to be a long video, longer than, a minute or two. Other than that, I might watch it on my phone. But for me to hunt down a 15 or 10-second video on YouTube, I'm probably not going to do that. That's too much work. It's not really the right platform for it. But now with this, I can share my whole day in 15-second increments and people will watch it like it's television. Like that is mind blowing of a concept. I'm not a famous person. How many people know me? But people will sit and watch my day. And not only that, I can tell exactly who watched my day. Like with YouTube, if a bunch of people liked a video that I posted, like, thank you, that's really nice. But if they didn't comment, I don't know who they are. But with this, I can just scroll and see every single person who watched my story and where they dropped off watching my story, which no other platform, well, except for Snapchat, gives that ability. And that's a really, really key differentiator to know exactly who it is that's watching your story and then tap through and start a conversation with them. Maybe follow them back, send them a direct message, build a relationship of some kind or invest more in a relationship. That is a huge, huge thing. And I think it's underutilized in this environment.
I'm a big fan, huge fan of building relationships with people, and I don't. At the crux of it, I don't think it's ever changed. It's find someone that you like, go up to them, say hello, right? It could be find someone that you like, go up to them online and say hello, right?
True.
And I think people miss that. I think people miss the relationship piece of social media. I tell people almost exclusively, yes, I post videos, yes, I post content, but it's kind of the Michael Phelps effect. It's the things that you don't see that are powerful, right? So you and I have had conversation before. You and I have texted back and forth or shared emails with each other. People don't see those type of things, right? That's the powerful thing. And I think more people need to get into that. I mean, heck, I basically feel like I wrote an entire book about build real relationships with people that no one can ever see, because that's the most powerful thing. And I think more people need to talk about that because it's just saying hello to people. Like, just say hello. Not everyone's going to say hello back, but amazing things can happen when they do. And you have a new friend. And the more friends you have, the better your life will probably be. Right?
Yeah. It's so simple, right? It's not even a complex formula. You need this degree or that. It's get to know people and try to be nice. That's what it boils down to.
It's your alumni networks, right? Like, we are all connected to all these people. Like, if you where'd you go to college, you said?
I actually went to the University of Wales. I lived in the UK for a little bit.
So the University of Wales. So you have an alumni network there. Yeah. Guess what? Everyone that comments or watches your videos, you have that's your alumni network. Or maybe you're part of a Facebook group. That's your alumni network. Like, think of them like that. So I believe that on a lot of platforms, in person or offline, or in person or online, being a pioneer is very powerful. But you've switched back and forth, kind of going from Instagram to Snapchat to Instagram. I'm sure there's some others in between and before that you haven't kind of done. How does one continue to stay relevant when maybe you weren't one of the first adopters on one of those platforms?
Yeah, I wish there was an easy answer to that question. I don't know. And that's why I've sort of spent more time on the ALEXA, on the Amazon Echo world, because it's very hard sometimes if you're not in the forefront, right? If you're a big name or you can dedicate thousands of hours to it, or you have money and resources that you can use, okay, great. But if you're just starting out, it can be really hard to rise above the noise when there's a lot of noise on the platform already. So I think what you have to do is take the lessons that you learn from each platform and apply them to the next platform. That's what I did when Snapchat came out with stories, and I figured out how to use it. And then Instagram came out with stories, and I was like, okay, yes, now I know exactly how to start off, because I already made all the mistakes before, right? Whatever lessons you learn from past platforms, time to the new. Like in high school, we had AOL Instant Messenger, right? And I had a ton of stupid conversations where I said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing on AOL Instant Messenger. I was like, okay, made that mistake, won't be doing that again. So you learn and you apply each of those to the next platform. I mean, have you ever done it where you sent an email and you hit send before you meant to, or something like that?
Probably today.
Yeah. You're like, okay, well, I won't make that mistake again, or whatever. And you keep applying those. Maybe you blind carbon copied one and they replied all, or whatever. We all make those mistakes, and sometimes things go awry, but you learn.
Okay. So is there a reason why you are, and I think I know the answer, but is there a reason why you keep spelling out ALEXA? Is it so on someone's phones?
No, it may be on their phones, but if anyone has a device that they're either listening to this on or they have one in the room, every time I say the word Alexa, their device is going to go off, and they're going to get really annoyed really quickly, because she's going to say, I searched for, they're going to get really annoyed really quickly, and I didn't find anything. And so this you'll be getting some emails from people who are like not impressed. So that's why I was spelling it.
Yeah, I get a message from Eric Olson, who connected us, and he'd be like, "Come on, man, rookie mistake. You have to spell it out. ALEXA. That's funny." So, how did you get into the whole Alexa space?
So I had a
the
friend.
ALEXA space.
it's your listeners. Yeah. So I had a friend who was very big into this, and so there's OK Google, right? And there's the Amazon Echo service and Siri and some other ones. And they all do a host of different things. But Amazon's is unique because if you say, OK, Google, tell me the news, she'll tell you, headlines or things that you've subscribed to from CNN, Wall Street Journal, whatever. Amazon's service does the same thing. The only difference is with Amazon, anyone can create their own news show that people can subscribe to. So I said, OK, I want to make a show about what I want to make a show about. Will people listen? And the answer is yes. People are searching for and subscribing to all kinds of different shows. Whatever you're into, as much as you can niche down, people will be searching for and finding your show. If you wanted to do a show about fly fishing in Lake Michigan, I guarantee you some people are super into fly fishing in Lake Michigan, want to know every news update every day about that. And by asking their device, they can get that.
So if you think about it, it's kind of what you're searching for on a daily basis. So traditionally, someone wakes up maybe our parents wake up in the morning, maybe you do this, I don't, but they traditionally wake up, they read the newspaper, or they turn on the TV news, and they want to know within 5 to 10 minutes what that news is of the day. What most people don't realize is that same news is cycling through every 10 to 20 minutes. Same thing with radio and the songs that they're playing. Every 20 to 30 minutes, it's cycling through the same songs, because most people are only doing that said thing for so long. And now the people who drive for a living, obviously they get ticked off and they have to hear the same songs over and over again. But most people are cycling in 10, 15, 20-minute cycles. So you're saying it's people are subscribing to content that they want, like they would on their YouTube, their Instagram, whatever, their Facebook feeds. But they're getting in the audio version of that thing at some point in the morning or whenever they're listening to it each and every day. And that's basically what a flash briefing is.
Correct. Yeah. And the example that you used about the TV is great, because in that example, I'm watching whatever CNN wants me to watch. I have no say in what they show me. I'm really interested in a certain kind of news. Too bad. But with this, whatever niche little thing you're into, there's a chance for you to find that and be connected with it in a very short amount of time.
That's what I like about podcasts, is because I can find someone that I like and I can listen basically to what they're going to say. And if I don't like them, I just stop listening to them basically, right? But if I start liking the things that they keep saying or the interviews that they have, I'm probably going to not only subscribe, but listen on a regular basis. And I think that's a powerful thing. What's interesting about this platform with flash briefings right now is that to subscribe, you have to go through a web portal. Is that still the case?
You can do it through the Amazon Alexa app as well. But yes, you have to go to Amazon.com and search. But that's actually a good thing because people are on Amazon.com searching all day, every day anyway. Like, I don't know about you, but that's where I get, my shampoo and my music and, all the other things that I buy on a regular basis. So in my case, my flash briefing is about Instagram. People are searching the Amazon store for books about Instagram, other information.
So if I just search your show on Instagram, on Amazon, it's going to pop up?
Yeah. I mean, if you type in the word Instagram, there's a lot of other books and things that are more popular. I might be on like the second or third page or whatever. But if you type the exact name of my flash briefing, I'll come up first. If you go to amazon.com/skills and type Instagram, I think I'm the only result. No, there's other ones, but I come up first.
So the exact name is what for the listeners?
The Instagram stories.
The Instagram stories flash briefing. Interesting. I did not know you could do it on Amazon like that. That's really cool.
Yes, that's the really cool part about it is people are big into SEO and all that, and I know zero about SEO. I never claimed to, but this to me is a great shortcut to kind of get around that. And this platform is not as big as it could be, will be. It's not there yet. It's so new.
150 million speakers out in the wild, but only 10,000 flash briefings, of which half of those are basically defunct. It's crazy. Most people don't understand. Say what?
You know your stats. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but most people with SEO don't understand that they're trying to build up something that doesn't even basically use SEO in the same way. So a lot of people don't understand that social media is basically not SEO. It's basically not a repeatable, searchable engine. It's basically what's relevant that day to who you follow and some sort of algorithm that we're going to spit you through. If something actually is talking to some sort of search engine, which is what you're saying in this case, I guess Amazon is a search engine in that case. Most people can win that. It's very difficult to do that on social because you could have a very popular post from 2 years ago. It's very hard to find that through a search engine just because it's not the way that those things work, but most people don't think that way. And I think that's a very powerful thing. So the Instagram Stories Flash Briefing by you, Daniel Hill Media. Where do you think audio is going?
I think it's going to be in car, super niche, exactly as long as your commute is for exactly what you want. So I don't know about you, but some people have 15-minute commutes. Some people have an hour and a half. Whatever you want in that 15-minute, like you might get into an hour-long podcast, but when you get to work in 15 minutes, you're going to say, okay, maybe I'll get back to that later, or maybe I won't. But if it's exactly for the amount of time that you have in your commute, it'll say, okay, 10 minutes of news, 5 minutes of Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then boom, you'll be there. And that's what you want. That's what you program. So I think that's where it's going eventually.
So are you saying that instead of going to your podcast app right now, instead of going to your music app right now and having that play through your car, there's going to be a new app that's just based on these things that has the duration of your commute in your car? Or do you think it's actually going to be the platform in the car that's not tied to your phone?
I think it might be the second one. I think as car manufacturers recognize that voice has a key role in the cars, it will move more toward that. If you get in your car and you say, okay, Google, whether the phone picks it up or the car picks it up or whatever, it's going to know where you're headed, right? Because you go to the same place every day, or Google knows where your work is and your house is, and then it already knows what services you've subscribed to, right? So if you get in the car and you turn it on, you say, okay, Google, or good morning, or Alexa, or whatever, and then it'll just play the routine like it should.
What I love about voice is that you can almost do two things at once. You can drive and listen, right? You can work out and listen. You can consume those things, where I think a lot of people with ebooks per se were saying, hey, ebooks are going to kill the physical book. The problem is you still have to do both of those things, and you can only do one of those things at one time. Right? Yes, you're not spending as much money on printing and things like that. Sure. It's environmentally friendly. Sure. However, you can't go work out and read a book. You can work out and listen to a book. You can drive and listen to a book. You could work out and read a book, sure. But really, you can't, right? And so that's what I think is so powerful about the audio form is that it's getting bigger and bigger every single day. More people are consuming and doing multiple things at once. And I think it's going to be, like you're saying, it's very powerful. And so I'm with you. I definitely think it's going to continue to grow. What's something, Daniel, that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
So on a whim, a few years, maybe about a year and a half ago, I decided I wanted to try stand-up comedy.
Oh boy.
And I don't know if you've ever tried that. And I'll just a minute on this, but if you ever feel like you have something to say or no one's listening to you, and you maybe have a joke or something funny, a funny story, whatever, I'm going to say just get out there and just try it for 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever it is. Try to put something together, because the first time you get a laugh, it is the most rewarding feeling in the entire world. Like it's you realize that, and you're going to bomb, you're going to learn a million little skills that you didn't know you had when it comes to public speaking, presentation, people. Maybe that thought terrifies you or makes you break out into a cold sweat. Try it anyway. These are invaluable skills you learn in 3 minutes that you can't get anywhere else.
I'm a big fan of doing things that challenge you. It's the reason I'm doing the Ironman race in a few weeks, because not only do I have to put in a lot of training for it, and that's good for health and all that stuff, but like when something actually challenging pops up after I've done this race, it's like, well, I've done this other thing that was way more challenging than this.
Yeah.
So I do a ton of performances, public speaking for a living, and occasionally I tell people I'm gonna practice my comedy while I'm up there, and
sure,
it's
they're already a captive audience, man.
Yeah, it's sometimes I win, sometimes I get the sympathy laughs, and when I get that, I'm like, well, thank you for the courtesy laugh, I appreciate that. My wife was right, I'm not funny. So I mean, you got to engage people, right? It just because you're on stage doesn't mean that someone isn't watching Netflix or a TV show or some sort of IG feed or something like that. Like, they're constantly changing the channel. If you're not engaging them, it's not going to work. So I love that. Okay, so to find you at Daniel Hill Media on Instagram, and then the Instagram stories flash briefing, just type that in to Amazon the same way you would buy something. So if you're buying a bar of soap tonight, you can also enable this amazing show. And so you can do that on your phone as well, right? You can see it on your phone. You don't have to have a smart speaker. And then in 5 years, when you're listening to this, you'll be listening to it in your car.
Absolutely. Hopefully it's before then, but yes.
5 minutes probably.